Obviously, the chat function is working. I can hear myself fine. All right, we're back up to speed. All right, back to logistics. For those online, please keep your microphones off and your cameras off and your microphones muted unless you're speaking. We can use the chat function to point out things that I'm doing wrong or ask questions, which is being monitored. We do have a very full agenda today. There's a quick bullets of the topics we'll be covering. During the lightning news to share, if you are speaking, we've got a central microphone in the aisle here for those present. And if you could kind of line up, the slides are timed for 1 minute each. And whether you are online or here in person, you will have 1 minute to tell your story, and we will move to the next slide. For those viewing online, it might be advantageous when we hit the lightning news to share to turn on your view icon, which you'll find in the upper right-hand corner, to active speaker view, and that way you won't have to search to see who may be speaking at the time. Okay. On the right of the panel is year 2 for our commemorative CICOES tree, taken outside the building, outside of Wallace, and it seems to be doing just fine. It has survived January, as we have down here, as everybody else. We've got a gorgeous day down here in Seattle, and hopefully our summer weather patterns about to kick in. We'll start off, as we always do, with introductions. Welcome people to our community. And here is a list of our new permanent hires over the last 12 months. And we include the postdocs in this list. And you can see which group they're working with or which faculty member they're affiliated with. We're happy to welcome everybody. We hope that we'll see more and more of everybody's faces. And the other extra shout out that I'd like to do is that Carol Perez, the last name on the list, who starts July 1st, is going to be our new HR person. And we're excited to welcome her on board, and she'll have lots of adventures once she arrives because that position's been vacant since Abby's left us back in the spring. The other set of introductions that I'd like to do is we're also very happy to welcome the new cohort of our summer interns. This is the first year in the last 2, well, actually last 3, that we've been able to have everybody on campus. And we have them all with us here today. And they're sprinkled throughout campus. They're sprinkled over at the Alaska Fisheries Science Center, working with government scientists as well as academics. Lots of different departments, some in the field, some in front of computers. And we hope that your summer is going to be enjoyable and productive, and that you'll find out a little bit about what we do as the summer goes on. Another section that we want to make sure we do is recognize those that have had special events and through the last year. And I've got a series of those that I've been able to find. If you've been omitted, please don't be offended. It's just that the news didn't trickle to me. But I want to start off mentioning Berlin Berkmeyer, who works with the Marine Mammal Group at the Alaska Science Center. Turn off my mail notifications. Who was awarded just recently, formally, the UW Award of Excellence in a Together We Will Award. And it's really been for her large contributions to the health and safety plan reviews, of which we have done over, probably approaching 140 over the last couple of years, as well as her contributions to the DEI committee. And that was a university-wide award. Yang Wei, who's with us today, there he is, has picked up a couple of recognitions in the past year. He was part of a team that was awarded a Grand National Prize for Excellence in Structural Engineering for a Gladys Valley Marine Studies building, which is an Oregon State University building down in Newport, which was earthquake tsunami, and evacuation point, all included as design features, and has also been named a NOAA PML Ambassador of Tsunami Risk Assessment for all the work that has been done over the last years. Cynthia Chrisman was awarded an Alaska Fisheries Science Center Employee of the Year for her lead and contributions to the survey for Aleutian harbor seals, and as well as working to help with the COVID field procedures for on the NOAA side. Oh, I apologize. It should be Alex Zerbini was awarded an AFSC Employee of the Year for a new approach to a Southeast Alaska harbor porpoise abundance estimate. And also want to recognize Molly McCormley and Diana Herring, who were named AFSC staff members of the quarter. So for the interns, we have a large portion of the CICOES community sitting as co-located employees at the Alaska Fisheries Science Center. So we have this mix of federal and academic people and activities as we go along. And if we haven't included something that you think is worth recognizing over the last year, please always don't hesitate to let us know, and we'll make sure it gets included next time. Okay. So now just time to give you a few factoids about our activity. Despite the COVID challenges, the number of projects that have been successfully accepted and initiated were 56 over the last fiscal year, 2 at OSU, 10 at the University of Alaska Fairbanks, and 44 here at UW. 38 of those have been signed under the cooperative agreement, and there have been 18 external proposals written by PIs and accepted from a wide variety of agencies. And I need to probably add one more to that because I heard late last night that there's been another one come in. So we can bump the total up by one. From those projects, there's about $22.5 million. 88% of that falls under the cooperative agreement, and then the remainder externally funded. And you can see under that line the distribution among the institutions. So we're down a little bit compared to our long history, but I think it's still admirable activity and increased activity up at the University of Alaska Fairbanks, given the challenges that everybody's faced through getting research done in COVID. Those are the only kind of factoids I wanted to share with you, but UMA has prepared a summary of activity up at the University of Alaska Fairbanks, and I'm going to stop my share and turn it over to her.
You need to get permission to share. I'm not able to share my screen yet.
Okay, let me. Does that work, Uma? You are now a co-host.
I restarted my computer, so I'm on a different computer, and okay, 1 second. It is, yeah, here. Sorry, it's different. I'm having, John, do you have my document on your computer? I'm having some permission issues. If you have it, if you could share it.
I have the version you sent me last night.
Yep, that's perfect.
Yeah, give me a second.
Well, I can start talking just to keep things moving while John finds a slide. So the first slide really is a picture of our lobby and our webpage. So it's really good to be able to share today at the CICOES All Hands meeting after really a few years of many challenges. I'm Uma Bhatt from the University of Alaska, which is located at Troth Yada, the traditional homelands of the Lower Tanana Dene people. CICOES UAF is housed in the International Arctic Research Center, where we're displaying the lovely banner that you can see in the picture that was created by Jed Thompson. And the other visual shows our webpage, CICOES UAF landing page. And really, it's all about working together to solve complex problems. You see this. So I serve, and when you're ready, you can go to the next slide. So yeah, I serve as lead for CICOES at UAF, and our former fiscal manager, Sarah Garcia, worked for the previous CI and CICOES, and she's been promoted to another position at UAF. And she's been replaced by Sheena Tanner, who's shown here as our fiscal manager. And Sheena's been here since April with us, and she's set up nicely.
Hold on. Uma, give me 1 second. We've got too many screens going on here. There we go. Thank you.
Sure. So we're on the second slide. So Sheena would have been here, but unfortunately she had a death in the family this morning, so she can't introduce herself. But anyway, I'm sure you'll get to know her and meet her, and folks at UAF, please stop by her office. So we're on slide 3. So this plot shows, oh my gosh, totally chaotic. This plot shows the, we're on slide 3.
Yes.
It's working here, but not on Zoom.
It's not on Zoom.
On Zoom.
Oh,
Yeah, Kara says we can't see slides. Oh, Zoom error.
Sorry, John. I restarted my computer because lately before Zoom meetings, it seems more stable when I restart and the restart.
there we go.
Oops.
Try that one.
All right, this plot shows the amount of funding in year 1 and 2 of CICOES and the 3rd year with the currently pending projects. I think John had already highlighted the earlier numbers. And I really commend our researchers who've connected their work with NOAA needs to serve Alaska in areas spanning from fisheries to emergency management. I want to highlight that this coming year, we have 8 people who will sit in NOAA facilities in Juneau and Seattle. And this is actually important for us in Alaska because there'll be 7 postdocs and 1 technician who are mentored by various faculty, Jessica Glass, Megan McPhee, Sherry Manzer, and Curry Cunningham. And I really think that sitting together is really key, in my opinion, for collaborations across groups. And the NOAA folks should also be acknowledged for helping to make this work. And one example that was relayed to me was NOAA's Dave Kimmel, who's really helped Curry Cunningham's graduate student, Genoa, navigate obtaining her degree remotely from Seattle, from UAF, by really making sure that she's part of a research community at the Alaska Fisheries Science Center in Seattle. And I'm sure there's others that should be called out for these types of collaborations. Now, the next slide, let me highlight a few diverse projects. And monitoring in Alaska waters is essential, and the Distributed Biological Observatory, or DBO, is really such an example. And UAF's ocean acidification research, led by Natalie Menaki, measures the marine carbonate system in Alaska coastal waters. And their CICOES funding fall under environmental chemistry and ocean carbon themes, and really enables collaborations with 3 different NOAA offices and UW CICOES. Next slide, please. CICOES funding supported a very late cruise for PI Seth Danielson into the Bering Sea, seasonal and annual DBO ship sampling, and year-round Chukchi Ecosystem Observatory time series sampling by year-round autonomous moorings are helping to identify and track environmental and ecosystem changes in the Pacific Arctic. Next slide, please. CICOES funds are also supporting educating the next generation, which is really particularly important in Alaska as homegrown talent seems to thrive here. Mr. Chung is an MS student with PI Curry Cunningham on comparing observer and logbook observations for Alaska sablefish to develop standardized indices of abundance for Alaska sablefish using this fishery independent data. And really such data science helps to improve our fish abundance estimates, so you don't have to go out and measure everything. Next slide, please. The rightmost image is from the National Weather Service website on July 29th, 2021. It shows the areas of the tsunami warning and tsunami advisory issued by NWS following the magnitude 8.2 Chignik earthquake. This was the largest earthquake in the US since 1964. The black arrows mark locations where the Alaska Earthquake Center, or AEC, operates earthquake monitoring stations in direct support of NOAA's tsunami mission. The photo on the left shows an actual station from St. Paul Island. This monitoring is really critical for safety, and NOAA issued its first tsunami warning less than 5 minutes after the earthquake, and this warning was based very heavily on data provided through their CICOES funded project. And under this project, AEC serves seismic data in real time to support missions for NOAA's warning centers in Alaska and Hawaii. Next slide. Other projects focus on the future, and PI Peter Biniak has been constructing future downscaled climate scenario information to support hydrological monitoring for the Naknek River near Bristol Bay, where there's a planned development of a hydroelectric dam. And this diversity of projects really shows how much is on NOAA's plate and by association on CICOES. Next slide. This was a very quick look at some of our projects, but as we look forward, we want to, I think for Alaska, we really want to grow the number of personnel that are co-located at NOAA facilities to serve NOAA needs in Alaska. And really co-location really helps to foster collaboration. At UAF, the Atmospheric Sciences Department, which I'm part of, is on the same floor with the Fairbanks Weather Service. And this has really been a steady and strong collaboration, even with as busy as forecasters are. And we really need to home grow National Weather Service forecasters for Alaska, because this is a real problem. Forecasters are hired, they come to Alaska, they take 1.5 years to be trained, and then they work for a couple more, and then they move on to other jobs in the lower 48, closer to family and friends. And this is really a strain on resources and a brain drain because our numbers are small, and really training local students will help keep more staff in Alaska. And we also want to develop the social science and data science activities in Alaska that can be really useful for NOAA. And finally, we want to continue to build the consortium model that fosters true collaboration. Thank you for your attention. Thanks, John.
Great, thanks very much, Uma. And Uma, you've reminded me, and I missed my own reminder. As part of the awards and recognition, I really want to stop and make a couple of special shout outs. One to Fred for his multiple jobs, in addition to the challenges of revisions to Workday and our shared services uncertainty. And he's also doubling as the HR person. So all of these hires and things are largely loading up on Fred's plate. I also want to make a shout out to Deb, our grants person, who has pushed through all of our internal and external grants over this very busy grant season, made it hopefully as painless as possible. And I know that she's put in a heck of a lot of hours to get that all done. So I do want to take this time to acknowledge those and thank those two for going above and beyond. Okay, now bear with me. We're going to stop the share and switch over again. Yvonne's giggling at me this whole time.
Actually, I think we deserve an applause for doing this. Cheers to you.
All right, so, all right, we are trying a new thing this year. Not sharing yet either. I'm just gonna keep everyone in suspense. I can't walk and talk at the same time. Okay. Give me a second. Full screen. Oh, wrong one. Hold on, stand by. Okay, getting that one? Okay.
Good on Zoom.
Okay, we've had our partner updates. The next one is an update on our CICOES initiatives. And there are a couple that are local here, but we also want to remind people of the opportunities that we have within our community for programs that we've started and provide resources to support all sorts of different things that make up research efforts and education efforts. To a reminder to both our NOAA collaborators and all our PIs is that we still have the reduced indirect cost rate available for postdocs to make them competitive with the NRC postdocs. Happy to report that with the grad student fellowship program, we've awarded 7 quarters for previous fall and winter quarters at UW. The call for fall and winter upcoming academic quarters is closing soon. That'll be another set of things to review. And we have had previous support through the GROW program, through the Dean's office, which we appreciate. And we're hoping that they'll continue that support so we can expand this program. And we had our recent call and review for our CICOES research development grants, and that is partner-wide. There are 2 categories, both collaborative grants and UW grants. Only one was awarded last call. Must admit, we were a bit surprised it was undersubscribed. So what we're doing is we're going to take the funds that were not committed through that call and adding them and starting a new call that will be announced this fall. It will include both collaborative and UW categories, but also want to announce through this meeting an additional category that I'm going to add. And for lack of a better title, and if somebody's got a suggestion, always happy to hear it, but I'm going to call them just in time. And this is somewhat analogous to the NSF. If you've got an opportunity to especially leverage additional funding, need proof of concept type samples, or there is possibly a aircraft available to go and sample, we will entertain a proposal along the same format out of cycle with our regular calls. We don't want anybody to miss an opportunity to get some really good work done or potentially leverage a larger project. So I'm going to add that to our research development grants, and hopefully there will be those that can take advantage of it. We'll post something on the website to include details for that one. And I think that's what I want to share with you for the initiatives update. Now we'll try our experiment. I'm calling this lightning news to share. Everybody gets 1 minute and 1 slide. So the call went out for slides and they continued to trickle in even as late as 10 o'clock this morning. So I've tried to incorporate as many as possible into this slide deck. When we get started, the slides are timed. If you are tuning in remotely, I suggest that you possibly switch to the active speaker view in Zoom. If you look up in the upper right-hand corner of your screen, you'll see view and the 3 dots, and you could speak or choose active speaker, and hopefully that will cycle through who's speaking. I will be running the slides here, and they will all kick in the timer. Hopefully all of the speakers have had know where they are in the order. We're going to start off with the 2 from UAF and then go alphabetically through those that I've got in the slide deck here. And we'll finish off with the postdocs, whom I've asked to give you a sense of what they're up to. All right, so here we go with the first one from Megan, and I will turn it over to you.
All right. So as you might have heard in the news lately, pollock fisheries in the Bering Sea and Gulf of Alaska incidentally catch Chinook and chum salmon, sometimes in large numbers. NOAA produces yearly estimates of the stock composition of the salmon bycatch. In the past, this process has been quite slow, with final estimates being published around 1.5 years after the fact. The goal of this project was to adapt a new analytical method. The program Rubius is implemented in R, which allowed postdoc Pat to construct analytical pipelines that automate going from sample data to final report much more efficiently. He also explored what minimum sample sizes were necessary to produce accurate stock composition estimates, as shown in the figure. In the past, the lab has used a 100 as its minimum sample size, but Pat found that 60 was adequate, which is useful because it allows us to subdivide the samples for finer scale exploration of spatial and temporal trends in bycatch, which could help the pollock fleet better avoid catching sensitive salmon stocks.
Thank you very much. Natalie, you're up.
Hi there. We partner with the PMEL Ecofoci group and the PMEL Carbon group to outfit the M2 mooring in the Bering Sea with a sensor that monitors surface seawater carbon dioxide. Our fall recovery cruise was canceled in 2021 and the mooring wasn't picked up until January 2022. The sea ice reached the M2 site 4 days before our charter got there. We lost the tower and had some damage to the surface float, but we got everything else back. This includes the first ever surface CO2 measurements collected in the winter. Few observations are made in the winter, and while these data were collected during an extremely stressful time of storms and canceled cruises, the data are pretty exciting. Our carbon dioxide data from M2 are included in synthesis products calculating regional and global carbon budgets, and these data show that the surface Bering Sea is a carbon dioxide source in the winter.
Thank you very much. Sean is representing Dave.
Hi, so Dave just wanted to present, but he can't be here. Dave works with the EOI group and he wanted to tell you about our cruise with the West Coast Ocean Certification group and the carbon group at PMEL from last summer. So the assumption has been that most of the methane from the seafloor is oxidized in the water column before it reaches the sea surface and is released. And that's from sort of some broad global ocean surveys, mostly in the open ocean. But with this cruise last summer, Dave was able to take thousands of samples from, I think, close to 17 different transects along the coast, looking at methane all through the water column, and found quite a lot of methane associated with upwelling, some methane seeps, and down in Santa Barbara Basin, the oil gas seep field. So it was all quite interesting.
Thanks, Sean. Tara's up.
Hi, yeah, I'm Tara from the team. I just wanted to give an update on what the Global Tropical Buoy Rate program has been on. We did a cruise earlier this year, it was December, January, from Mauritius to South Korea, to meet Esther and Corey Martin were on this cruise. We were able to deploy 2 raw surface moorings and 1 ACCP in the Seychelles Chavo thermal time region. And you can see a few photos here. We also deployed 6 Argos floats and 20 drifters. And I want to just highlight the graph up in the top right of the 12 south, 67 east. You can see by the wind there's strong seasonal variation, with the first part of the year being light and variable due to the intertropical convergence zone area. And then right now in June, we have strong southeasterlies, which are bringing the monsoon season up to India. You'll also notice in the sea surface temperature that as we get into the southern hemisphere winter, temperatures are starting to decline. And the cruise was about 35 days long. Thank you.
Thank you, Tara. Liz, you're up.
Yeah, so I don't necessarily have super cool results to show, but I just wanted to take this opportunity to sort of introduce myself. I've been with CICOES since 2018, but I've worked remotely and still work remotely this entire time. So I primarily work on marine mammal behavior and physiology. My current projects include looking at marine heat waves and consumption landscapes for stellar sea lions. So here we're essentially showing that the marine heat wave in 2014 to 2016 essentially caused a redistribution in prey consumption landscapes on the order of thousands to tens of thousands of metric tons of prey in the Gulf of Alaska. I've also got projects looking at prey availability and anthropogenic disturbance on cook and lip belugas, essentially showing that there's synergistic impacts between changes in prey availability and anthropogenic disturbance. And I'm always looking for sort of new collaborators and project ideas. I'm a new PI this year, so if you're interested, please reach out via email. And that's all I've got.
Perfect timing. Thank you, Yvonne.
Hey, hi everybody. I actually work in ecosystem-based issues management, and one of the key projects that we do every year are ecosystem status reports. You can actually get access to the slides. There's a link over there, and you can see the kind of reports that we put together. But essentially, it's a synthesis of what is going on in the ecosystem for the current year. And we also do ecosystem assessments So if you do any sort of driver analysis, oceanography, chemical oceanography, fish, marine mammals, seabirds, really anything that is going on in the ecosystem that you think is relevant for what is happening currently, or there's a specific trend, then we're interested in your collaboration, and in particularly I work in the ocean islands as well. So if you have any research there, that would be great. And just showing what's our current trends that we are interested on. Some fish condition actually decreasing for several fish. The cascading down salmon, and then I'm going to leave it up to Darren Filter.
Thank you for the segue, Darren.
Hi, yeah. So a lot of my recent work has focused on using a regional model of the Bering Sea to generate ocean acidification products on multiple timeframes for NOAA fisheries management. So this includes near-term tactical products for the ecosystem status report and the ecosystem and socioeconomic profiles, along with long-term strategic projections used within the Alaska Climate Integrated Modeling Project. You can see examples of both of these in the figures at the bottom, showing annual surface pH averaged over the entire Bering Sea shelf. The black line is the historical hindcast simulation, with the blue and orange lines showing our model projections under 2 climate change scenarios. The spatial plot then shows this current year's anomaly compared to the historical hindcast, illustrating relatively more acidic conditions, particularly on the outer shelf domain that we're seeing for this year. Guess I had more time.
No, you're out, but that was great,
Quick
Darren.
outreach update. Our first in-person outreach events in over a year last summer. This is with a group of kids from the Adventure Camp. They're elementary school students that come to UW for a week to learn about science, and we had a group of CICOES researchers affiliated with the AFSC Marine Mammal Lab teach them about the difference between seals and sea lions and the marine food web, and they did a really cool squid dissection. So we're going to have them back in next month. And then just a few weeks ago, we had a group of 8th graders visit, and this was through a connection with the MESA program, which is through UW. They are, their goal is to provide science opportunities for communities that are traditionally underfunded and underrepresented. So those kids visited and had a series of hands-on events, including the squid dissection, and they also got a full tour of the UW fish collection. So thank you everyone who participated in outreach the past year, and hopefully we'll have more events coming up in the near future.
Right on cue.
Right,
Yeah.
we for tsunami, we got 2 big grants last year, and Red Cross and NSF hosted people research hub led by OCU and UW. We received new funds from Department of State to look into public tsunami impact on the overseas hosts. New research highlights. The first is the Tonga 2022 volcanic generated tsunami shown as the videos. The tsunami generation was mainly driven by the air pressure waves by the volcanic eruption. The other is R2O transition of the GNSS forecast tool at the warning host warning centers. And in the past year, CICOES Tsunami Group for the first time contributed to the NOAA unified forecast system of the coastal application on white paper water content.
Okay, thank you. Young, now Rob.
Hi, I'm Rob Wood. I'm professor in the Department of Atmospheric Sciences here. I'm working with Sarah Doherty with CICOES. And we've got a project to look at basically climate intervention. The idea of how, if we could brighten clouds to make them reflect more sunlight, as you see in all these little tracks there, each one of those tracks is created by a commercial ship putting out little small aerosols. If we could do that deliberately, how much brighter could we make the Earth's clouds, and how much additional sunlight could be reflected to offset some of the warming greenhouse gases? So this is a real early stage project. We're not talking about going out there and actually making the clouds brighter over large regions yet, but we're doing modeling basically on high spatial resolution and on climate model resolution as well. And we are planning some small scale outdoor experiments to start testing, creating our own particles of salt and making clouds brighter, but over a very small region.
Thank you very much.
Hello everyone, I'm Jia Zhang. I just want to give everybody an update on the aircraft-based hydrographic and meteorological survey at the Chengchi and overseas. Dr. Kevin Wood, who unfortunately passed away earlier this year, he has been utilizing the NOAA aircraft to collect data over the Chengchi and overseas. To honor his legacy, we started this effort. And we gathered a lot of support from different resources, including some emergency funding from CICOES. I just came back last week from the first survey. So the picture shows Kevin looking at his beloved sea waters again from the window of the airplane, and the picture on the right is me with all the airplane crews. In later July, we want to go back again and do another survey.
All right, great. Thank you very much. Now it's time to take a breath because we've blasted through a bunch of recent projects, ongoing projects, introductions to programs and projects. I've also asked postdocs to submit slides. The challenge here is that most of them are out at conferences this week. There are a couple that even arrived that I couldn't quite push in. They have got 1 minute each. I know that Colleen is here, so we'll start the postdocs.
Hi, I'm Colleen. I'm a postdoc working with Randy Bundy in School of Oceanography and Joe leading CICOES. Randy and myself currently have an NSF project funded to look at the role of iron-binding organic ligands and how they stabilize iron in mutually going plumes. This builds off some of the preliminary data that I've been working with on the Mid-Atlantic Ridge. And this year, I guess kind of two highlights. I went out to sea twice, once to the Southeast Pacific Rise with Joe, and I conducted two incubations looking at the physiochemical dynamics of trace metals and organics, as well as the bioavailability of hydrothermal iron. And then I just similarly got back last week from another cruise at Spinach Rock, which is off the coast of California in the US EEZ. And I got to kind of be the ship-based science lead for the NOAA team. It was a USGS NOAA kind of lab project, and learned a bunch of stuff, collected a bunch of water samples, and this will kind of go into our NSF.
Okay, thank you. Laramie.
Hello, I'm Laramie. I'm a postdoc at CICOES in Planetary Oceanography and APL, and I am working on connecting trace metals and nutrients concentrations in the Western Arctic to circulation. And part of this was getting a better handle on what's coming in from the Pacific through the Bering Strait. So that picture is me with a trace metal clean pump. I jumped onto a cruise through APL with one of my advisors, Rebecca Woodgate, collected recovering and redeploying moorings every year in July or September. And I was able to successfully collect trace metal clean samples for both nutrients and 7 or 8 different metals. And there's a clear connection between the trace metals and water mass structure in the Bering Strait. Just showing a kind of example of that with those TS diagrams. We were able to capture all 3 different water masses flowing through the Bering Strait, and the Alaskan coastal current seems to be highly important for the dissolved trace metals, but the anidure water, which is really important for nutrients, had almost no trace metals in it, which was very interesting and unexpected. And we plan to go back this fall. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Alex, I heard from this morning, who is actually out in the field. I'll try and pitch it a little bit. She's one of our Task 1 postdocs down at Oregon State at Newport, and she's a salmon shark person who is looking at predator-prey interactions with salmon and their prey field, particularly focusing on Chinook salmon. There's also squid and Pacific whiting or Pacific hake, depending on if you're a fisher person or not. The analytic parts are going to be stable isotope analysis and ultimately, hopefully, a modeling of the species distribution coupled with some tagging work. Happens. Sean.
Hello.
Thank you.
So in addition to working with Dave Butterfield on methane oxidizing microbes in the water column, part of my work has been focusing on pipelines and bioinformatics, trying to streamline our processes. So working on a pipeline to publish MetaPipe will enable us to look at amplicon-based data sets to rapidly go from raw data to figures and tables for researchers and ourselves to sort of get a first look at patterns and do that in 45 minutes instead of 3 weeks. So that's very helpful for us moving forward. And then we've also recently been sequencing blue whale genomes, about 100, we have 55 back. We're skimming them so that we can look at population genomics. And I'm working on pipelines with our new server so that we can do that quickly and get that out. Thanks.
All right, thanks, Sean. The next two are both out at Woods Hole this week. John Sharp sent me this slide, who is working on ocean biogeochemistry and looking at partial concentrations and partial pressures of carbon dioxide, using a lot of the sail drone observations as a data set and trying to develop and implement machine learning algorithms. This will also be transferred to the new Argo floats to take in the new data streams that are coming in, and with the overall goal of looking at ocean carbon measurements and trying to get both consistent measurements, quantify the variability, and look at trends both in time and space. Yang, who's also at the same conference as John, is also working on biogeochemistry, but looking at nutrients and nutrient budgets, and looking at both sources and sinks of nutrients across the ocean, particularly focusing on some of the long-term data streams out of the Aloha and Bats stations, which are pictured in the plot there. Ultimately, the goal here is to look at nitrogen phosphorus ratios in a sense of giving fluxes of production that are occurring across ocean basins, and he's taking both an empirical coupled with a modeled approach. Hopefully I did those last few ad hoc a bit of justice, and I'd encourage you, if you have an interest, to get a hold of any of the ones that I've pitch hit for, or any of our presenters that have shared their information. I think it was a great introduction to both the scope and depth that we have, and would encourage the people here just to give all our speakers a round of applause, and thank you. Okay, I'm going to stop my share so I can see the gallery. We haven't got a lot of time left, but I'm curious if there have been any other comments or questions that have popped up in this chat, or if there are any other topics that the people here would like to bring up. There, we can share what's going on here. What I see in the chat is all my mistakes that I'm technically on the fly. So. All right, I always got to make sure that there's an adequate time if people want to join in. I just want to again thank everybody for their participation. We have an evolving landscape that's heavily influenced by COVID. I think we've done an admirable job adapting, keeping the research going. We've had extraordinary efforts to get the field programs out, and acknowledge Yvonne and Colleen and Berlin, who's already been mentioned, for lots of reviewing of the health and safety plans. I can tell you that we are going to shift in the fall to a more a reduced form and a bit more of a liberal reporting policy, where if you've got consistent projects going, we'll be able to essentially reuse a lot of the health and safety plans. For those of you that have got longer term programs, hopefully it'll be a bit easier for you and for us. I don't think they're going to go away. gone this far without them. If you ever visited the UK, health and safety is a huge issue that's put forefront for any field effort. Other transitions that are going on, some are specific to UW, and I'll just mention there's lots to fall out yet, but a lot of you who are classified as research scientists, the union vote was positive and the freeze remains in place. There's lots of details to be shaken out now that the negotiations have actually started. We don't have much more or really any more information than you do. We will be happy to share when we get information, but the freeze continues and will be in place until the final agreement has been accepted by both sides. Are there any other items to share that we could think of? Well, in that case, thank you, everybody, both in person and those Zooming in. Hopefully we can continue and probably will continue the hybrid. Promise I'll practice a little more for next year. And until then, have a good afternoon. Enjoy your spring and hopefully summer weather. Thanks.
Bye.
All right. Thanks for coming, Rob.